Today we're going to start working in Workbook 3A, Exercise 1, and we will use textbook pages 6 through 8 to talk about this. So welcome to Primary 3. We are going to start with a lot of review of some of the numbers and yet at the same time remind ourselves how to think about numbers in a way that is going to help you be a mathematical thinker and to do your math work very well. The first thing on page 6 is just a reminder what we mean by the numbers 1, 10, 100, 1000. When I use the word 1, what I mean by that is a single item, one thing. When we talk about 10, it means 10 of those single items, or I've represented that in my recordings, my support, as a square with a check mark in it. The check mark tells us that square is totally full of 10 items. When we have the number 100, 100 is the idea of 10 tens, so you see that I have 10 squares with check marks. There are 10 things completely full, or I also represent that by a single circle with a check mark. When we talk about 1,000, 1,000 is 10 hundreds, and we represent that by 10 circles with a check mark or by a triangle with a check mark. Now I like to point out the fact that the number 100 is written like this, and if you say this number is 110, then this number is 10 tens. 1,000 is written like this, that is 10 hundreds. You could also think of 1,000 as 100 tens. And so all of these ways that we think about math and think about numbers, it helps you to really remember that 1,000 does mean 10 hundreds or 100 tens. And that's a very basic idea, but it really is foundational to understanding numbers and math and how to combine and add, subtract, multiply, divide. All of those things hinge on a real clear understanding of that concept. So on page 6 and 7, it gives us some opportunities to practice very basic things. Suman collected marbles. He put his marbles in a jar. Again, I represent my marbles or my numbers or whatever it is with the triangles and circles and squares. In this case, he has 3 hundreds, so I have the 3 circles with a check mark in it. He has 4 tens, which I've represented as a square with a check mark, and he has 9 ones. If we combine all of these marbles together, 30 and 40 and 9, if you combine them, what you have, not surprisingly, is the number 349. But when you see the number 349, you need to think of that as 3 100s, 4 tens, and 9 ones. Letter B, his sister also collected marbles. His sister has 2,000 and 400, 30, 5. So all of those marbles together represent the sister who has 2,435 marbles. And again, when you see the number 2,435, you need to realize that that means exactly that, 2,435. Now, often we put a comma every 3 numbers. So the 435 are in the hundreds area, and then in the thousands group we have 2,000, and we often put a comma. The book doesn't always put a comma, but sometimes it will. But just know that if you see the comma, it just helps your eyes to read the number quickly if you know exactly how many digits there are, because it's written that way. But if it's written without a comma, written with a comma, it's the same thing. Letter C just asks us to read those numbers. So 5,998 is how we read the first number. The second number is 6,012. We don't say 6,110 2 ones. The number 12 is there. There are no hundreds in that number, so simply 6,012 would be the way to write that number, or to read that number. And then 5,998, if we count from there to 6,012, we have 5,999. After that is the number 6,000, And from there, it's very intuitive. 6,000, I'm jumping way ahead, aren't I? 6,001, 6,002, 6,003, on up. I'm going to put a couple of dots here. Of course, after 6,009, you have 6,010. I'm doing exactly what I want to make sure you understand, and that is that when you have 6,010, it means you have 6 in the thousands place, a 1 in the tens place, and a 0 in the ones place. Then, I'm going to squeeze it in up here, 6,011 and 6,012. The idea is to see the pattern of the numbers and how they change. So for part E, starting at 9,987, the hundreds and the thousands don't change and the tens don't change until we get so many tens that we have to, or so many ones that we have to change it from 9,989 to 9,990. And then it rocks along as normal, just like you'd expect it to. 9,998 goes to 9,999. And then, of course, when you finish with all of those, when you add one more, you kick yourself over not just to the thousands place, but to the 10,000s place. So we're just practicing understanding all of the numbers and how the pattern works. And that just takes a little bit of practice. I bet you'll be really good at it. Page 8 gives us a few opportunities to take numbers and look at the picture and think about them and write them as actual digits. So let's do that. Again, the triangles represent thousands, so this is 3,000. Circles represent 100, 200. Squares represent 10, that's 7 tens or 70. And then the ones, there are 4 ones in this one. So the number we're looking at here is 3,274. In number 2 on the same page, it asks us to think about those numbers, and there's one little thing about it that we have to realize. This, of course, is 2,000. There are no hundreds in this problem. There are 4 tens, and there are 5 ones. When we write this number, we have to have 2 in the thousands place, we have to put a 0 in the hundreds place, 4 in the tens place, and 5 in the ones place, so that we have 2 thousands, 4 tens, 5 ones. Of course, if we did not put a 0 there, and we just had 2, 4, 5, that would be 245. That 2 has to be 1,000. So we can't do it that way. You must have the 0. Anytime a number is missing, we have to have the number 0 in the place. We actually have a name for that. We call it a placeholder. It holds the place so we don't forget that there's 0 hundreds in that number. So on letter B, you could pause the recording and try it on your own. See if your answers match mine. That's 1,307. And we write that number 1307. There's a placeholder of a 0 in the tens place because there are 0 tens in that problem. Letter C, we have 4,250, and there are no ones. So 4,250 is the answer for that problem. And again, as you can tell, without the 0 at the end, it would look like I meant 400, when in fact I do have 4,000. So be careful of those. Watch out for that. This section should not give you a lot of trouble. It'll just be review and thinking about numbers this way, making sure you're really solid in thinking about the value of each digit in the number. So now you're ready to do exercise 1.